come in late, I'll catch him up best I can.
Okay.
We're also going to be recording it as well, Mazin, so we can share that as
Great.
It didn't make it in.
Just as a little test of the room, if we wanted to extend by like 10 or 15 minutes in order to kind of cover more of the intention of today, maybe throw in the chat if that'd be possible for you. I would kind of just love to get a sense for where people are at with that.
It's good for me.
Right.
You are the link.
Good thing about Saturday. Great.
Yeah.
Cool. Well then, why don't we just spend the next minute, everyone on your own space, just doing some stretching and whatever you need to, bring your autonomic nervous system back to the general Saturday morning level. I know a little bit of technology hiccups can rev us up a little bit. And I'm sure the content of today's workshop will rev you up plenty. So you want to start nice and spacious, you know what I'm saying? I found that like spinal twisting stuff really helps me calm pretty quickly.
Oh, there's Prashanti. Okay, they're coming. There's Sarani.
Great.
Shall we do it?
Let's do it.
Hari Om, welcome everybody. You see, we gathered an exclusive club this morning. Only those with the patience and endurance to survive our technological problems. We're starting 27 minutes late, and I thank you all for waiting, for being patient, and finally for joining us. And I welcome Mazin Jamal on behalf of the Integral Yoga Institute. We're so proud to have him present this morning, and his topic is, I quote, "Your authentic contribution to racial equality, making sense and taking action from a spiritual foundation." There's a mouthful. And I don't want to take up any more time except to say we're in the presence of a very, very special soul. And this will be a deeply rewarding program. And thank you again for coming and for your patience. Take it from there, Jamal. I mean,
Gotcha.
Jamal. There's his last name.
All good, all good, all good. Yeah, really, y'all are great for sticking with us. Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Mazin, and let's just do a little grounding meditation together right now, and then we'll talk about the purpose of today's workshop. So go ahead and refresh your posture to whatever is a comfortable and right position for you right now. And just go ahead and say hello to your body. Just greet your body and invite your body to partner with you today, and your brain as well, so we can receive whatever we are here to get today. Thank you, my body, for carrying me through this life, being the conduit for my contribution to my community. And we can now bring our awareness down into the earth beneath us, down into the soil, through the waters underground, through the hot mantle and molten earth, all the way to the center of our planet, and grounding from our root to the center of our home. And here in the center of our home, we connect with the threads of all the others on this call. So just opening our hearts now to welcome all the individuals on this call. Just feel the presence of this community that's gathered today. And just feel that you are in good company. And why don't we take a nice big Om, exhaling empty wherever you are in your breath. Inhaling deeply. And just exhale. Another deep breath in. And returning to your breath. And finally, I invite you to make some weird faces, some weird noises. So if there's any aspect of you that's worried about looking good on this call, just throw that out the window. It's not gonna happen. We're gonna get nice and silly, so get a little stretch, well, vulnerable. We're not here to be right today, we're here to learn, right? So I'm throwing all intentions of looking good out the window. Invite you to as well. Sound good? Great. So everyone, please just throw into the chat, what is one quality or value that's in your heart that you want to contribute to our space today? And share your name. You can share where you're coming from. And I'm bringing, compassion. I'm bringing clarity. Just throw that in the chat right now. And if you are on a phone or something and you can't chat, just send it to us telepathically, and we'll receive it that way. Claire with receptivity, curiosity, vulnerability from Chile, love from Saran, openness, courage, knowing, beautiful, open heart and curiosity. Just keep them coming, and as you see them in the chat, receive them, and let these qualities that we're sharing with each other nourish you, because we're going to be much more powerful as a group mind today if we are connected with these qualities, because that's who we are. We are this love, we are this nourishment, we are this spaciousness, we are this curiosity. And that is the aspect of each of us we are inviting to be in the driver's seat today. All right? You see the love? You feel it? Ooh, it's kind of good, huh? Good. We're going to need it, because we're going into some big stuff today. Hunger for knowledge. Love it. And I want to see this chat just alive today, okay? So, without filtering, throw your reflections in the chat. This is how we're going to stay engaged. We all know what it's like looking at a screen. So keep yourself engaged so you'll get the most out of this by just popping your reflection in the chat. Like, even if it's like, oh yeah, or like, what's that? Whatever it is, throw it in, and we're going to stay connected in that way. So the purpose of today, in our workshop today, is for you to discover your unique and authentic contribution to the movement for racial equity that is happening right now. Now, I say it's happening right now, not to say that it hasn't been happening for the last 400 years, since the beginning of this country. I say it right now because that's where we are, and there is a collective wave of energy that we want to really use and flow with and move with, because this wave of energy is going to help us move past our stopping points and our blocks and where we've, procrastinated or whatever it is. I know it's helping me with that. And because this is also a moment where our communities, our friends, and our people are more receptive than ever before, our whole country, is awake to this in a different way. So it's just no better time than now. And this framework that I'm going to share with you that we're going to practice today, my hope is that it'll allow you to really align yourself and your actions from who you really are and what's important to you, so that you can use it when it comes to racial equity, and you can use it in other aspects of your life when you are seeking to contribute. So we're going to do a couple of definitions. Authentic. In this case, when I say authentic, I mean it reflects who you really are and comes from who you really are, right? It's not driven actions that are coming from the doubts and the worries, of what expectations you are and aren't going to meet. It's not, you trying to avoid being something or someone or getting canceled or being whatever it is. I know I have all those worries, and you'll hear some stories from me. But it's coming from who you really are. So to give a very brief example is, I want to donate $50 to a, Black-led organization for racial equity. And it's like in that very moment that I click send, what am I aligning to? What's in my heart? Is it like, great, I took care of the thing and now I don't need to feel bad, right? Or is it, this is love and this is healing my ancestral lineage and this is me contributing? And in those very moments where we are aligned, that is very, very key. Because when you're aligned in that way, you don't need to worry about, am I doing it for the right reasons or not? So we're going to talk a lot about authenticity. Contribution. Giving of yourself to nourish others, right? Service. Once again, it's not to appease anything or for a personal gain. Now, you can gain in the process of contributing so that you can increase your capacity to contribute. This workshop wasn't free, and that is going to allow me to continue to contribute what I'm doing. But at the heart of it, it's like, I know that if I do this full time, then I can really stay in the game longer. So it's still as a contribution to others, authentic contribution. Racial. I'm going to try to be brief with this. If you want a deep dive on my thoughts on what the hell race really is, you can see the interview I did on the Integral Yoga podcast a few weeks ago. But race, racism, white supremacy, these phenomena, these constructions that we are living in and that we have inherited, are a very specific point of action and of leverage in our world, right? There's a lot of issues of poverty and gender and class and all kinds of things. And there's something about, in our history, if you look at our history, there's something about movements for racial equity that for some reason they create this kind of snowball effect of more liberation. I have a lot of ideas of why, but all I'll say is that right now, this is what's alive in our society. So focusing on it right now, to me, makes sense. I want to make a distinction between race and ethnicity. What is race? Well, ethnicity is like your genetics, your ancestry, your heritage, right? It's like my ancestors come from this place and this place and this place and that place. For most of us, it's many. And it's an actual physical reality thing, right? Race is a social construction that is actually like a caste system in our country. So if you've studied any of the, yogic or Vedic texts, you know about these caste systems that basically what you were born into is your place in the society hierarchy. And that's what we're talking about. There's nothing right or wrong about ethnicity. It's just a part of being a human being, right? It's like being a chocolate Labrador retriever or a golden retriever. Really, that's about what it is. But race is a thing that, though it was constructed, has real physical reality repercussions. So,
okay.
Go ahead and mute yourself if you are not yet muted, and there'll be times to come off of mute. So that's what we're talking about with race. We're talking about this thing that America invented to split everybody up and control them. It's kind of like the curse that America is kind of haunted with right now, and that we have the opportunity to heal. And I will leave it there. Oh, one last example is I myself as an example, right? In America, my race is black. So when I'm interacting with the government and the systems and the police or whatever, I am black. When I get on a plane and I go to Sudan, which is where both of my parents are from, right? So there's a distinction in my privilege and my oppression and stuff. It's not the same generational privilege as people who are American descendants of the slave trade. When I go to Sudan, I'm Arab because I'm Muslim and I'm from the north, right? I'll get to your question in a moment, Claire. It's a great question. Did America invent race? So, you know, I'm in Sudan. The people of the south of Sudan are the black people, and we are the Arabs. And when England conquered us, it gave us the power. It said, "You're all still our slaves. You know, you northern Arab Muslims. You're still slaves to the queen or the king, but you're better than them. So, you know, if you just follow our orders and help us control them, you'll be all right." And that's exactly what happened in America. So did America invent race? No. We invented our own flavor. Or someone did. We didn't do it. Some rich white dudes did. And they told the poor white people, you know, who were the religious outcasts and the people who were, you know, basically ancestors were slaves to the lords and the serfs and the feuds back then, that, you know, you have a chance at getting a little leg up. So that is what we're talking about when we're talking about race. And finally, equity. Not the same as equality. Okay, I want to show you all the best example that really describes what is equity. And I'm going to share my screen here. This image describes equity in a very, very just clear way. So a lot of people talked about equality for a long time. And as you can see on the left, equality is like, look, everybody got the same box. Right? We're all equal. But as you can see, the starting place for each person in this photo is different. So equality is a well-intentioned move, but it doesn't hold this vast history that I just shared a little bit with you all, and we all have learned about in other places. Equity is making sure that where everyone is, based on where everyone is starting, everyone is having access. I love this third image, which is what they call liberation, which is like, let's just get rid of the fence so we don't need to do all this extra stuff. That's the end goal. And I love, you know, this is this organization called The Fourth Story. They're like, and there's something else that we haven't even thought of yet. So, you know, the next step is equity. Is the next place to align ourselves to, and liberation as well. You know, I can't really say that there's a specific order to this. So that's what I mean when I'm saying equity. And I'm going to close this piece out with a little story, and then we're going to open it up for people to, yeah, please keep the chat coming, and I want to hear from one or two of your reflections. Because a lot of people get stuck on this idea of, well, it's not my fault. And even though I know none of you on this call would ever say that out loud, because Lord knows what your friend group and your Instagram page would do to you. Or maybe you did, and you know, you felt the wrath of Facebook, right? But let's just keep it real, okay? Have we ever had that thought deep down like, gosh, this just is not fair, it's not my fault, right? Because I know I have with issues of gender inequality, and I'm just like, man, all these other men have screwed this up and whatever, and you know, this is me being blind to the ways that I was, of course, complicit to patriarchy and homophobia and. So here's my metaphor for us, right? This country of America that we all inherited, we're all born in this place, right? The inheritance wasn't split evenly, but we all got some slice of the pie, you know? Some of us got, you know, something really nice, and some of us got some broken glass. We all inherited something. And, it's kind of this haunted, it's like it's almost like a haunted house, okay? This metaphor is going to seem gruesome, but really, like, relative to what we're talking about, it's pretty tame. So take a deep breath, keep breathing. So we're in this haunted house. We were born into this mess, right? And we have this shared inheritance. So imagine you lived in a house and the floor was covered in broken glass. You were born into this house and it was already this way when you were born there. Everyone was already segregated up by all these ways. The system was already kind of set up the way that it was. And some people in the house had shoes and some people didn't. So some people are running around with these shoes, so they're not feeling the broken glass. They can kind of forget about that it's even existing for a while because they've got these shoes that are, protecting them. And then there are others that are running around with bare feet and their feet are being cut by the glass. And these wounds of these cut feet are tracking blood all over the house. And, we all see the blood and people try to ignore it, but the kind of evidence of the glass keeps coming to our attention again and again and again. So maybe it was your grandfather who broke the glass. Maybe it wasn't. But maybe you have shoes on and maybe you don't. Or maybe you have something in between. You've got some slippers, so if you step the wrong way, you get cut, but you know what I'm saying? But whether or not it's your fault that the glass is in the house, can we all see that it's our responsibility to clean up the mess? Responsibility is response-able, able to respond. And the more able that we are to respond, the greater our material privilege, but also, the greater our gifts, right? Our capacity, our spiritual awakenedness, our wisdom, our resilience as a community. That is how able we are to respond. So I invite us all to really not waste another calorie on the conversation of fault, but to shift our attention to the conversation of response-ableness, responsibility. Because that's when we get into action, right? So the last thing I'll say is that, for the people who have the shoes, and I would even say at this point, I have shoes. I've picked up some scraps and put some shoes together, if you're not cleaning up the glass, you live a whole life with shoes on, tracking dirt into your own home, sleeping with shoes on, getting glass in your bed, right? And you never get to run wild and free, which is how a lot of white people are in this world. Just like, who are my ancestors? Where do I come from? What is my identity? And that's true for a lot of people, not just white people, but it's just a specific example I'm giving of how privilege is also part of the curse. That shielding and sheltering. Go ahead, Claire, what's your question? And we'll take a few minutes to hear from...
it was a comment, and only when you're through with speaking. So okay. So I love what you're saying about, let's kind of just get past the idea of like whose mess is it to clean up, because it's a big effing mess and it must be cleaned up. But I think one of the real issues, like as we start to unpack this and kind of unwind some of the threads, is one of the real problems with America per se, is that there's this very deeply ingrained notion of American exceptionalism, which is not community oriented, which is not, people hear the word social, whatever, and they say, socialism. So I think Americans generally, I'm making a big, not every American, of course, but kind of as a nation, we're very disinclined to say, yeah, let's all pitch in and take care of things. Yep. It's just not in the way this country, whether it was not set up that way or whether it's just by dint of how it's, evolved. It's very unlike some other nations, which, have their fair share of problems and a lot of embedded racism. But, it's very different than some other countries that have more of an overall responsibility towards the country as shared work. And I think that's a big problem.
Yeah, I love this point that you made, and thank you. And it's actually precisely why I think the difference between fault and responsibility is helpful. Because I think one of the reasons that we're stuck in America is we are having a conversation about whose fault it is. And I'm not saying that we can't find fault. You can find some fault in my book and what I've done in this world, but I think the difference between our culture and many others is a lot of cultures are a culture of, if there's a mess, whoever's got the broom cleans it up. You know, and that's kind of the invitation, is for us to move into the kind of a conversation, and there's a different ability to respond based on where you're at, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But like, if you have money and privilege and access, you can respond in a much greater way of cleaning up the mess than someone who doesn't. So let's keep getting some more reflections in the chat and keep them coming. How do you handle getting a nonprofit to acknowledge racial equity when they say they don't take a political stance? Great, Catherine. You know, it's, to me, this is not really a matter of politics. It's a matter of ethics or morality. That's kind of, once again, a shift in the conversation. It's like, is it political if you know, see someone being hurt outside and you do nothing? It's like, is it a Democratic or Republican problem, or is it just a matter of ethics? I often come at that conversation from a place of, is this in alignment with our integrity and our values? Like, you know, and it helps people see that. And we'll get more into that today. We've all been cut off. Yeah. So yeah, keep these reflections coming, and keep your questions coming in the chat. So I want to have us from a place of, I see that I am able to respond, and I want to use myself effectively and well to help clean up as much of this mess as I can in this life. That's what we're going to be doing today. So next, we're going to go into something called your authentic contribution, and I want to kind of break it down. Is there any final burning questions or things in the chat? Throw them in. I may not respond in full right now, but I just want to have you put them in before we move on. Great. We'll get to that, Linda. Everyone take a deep breath. I can feel from across the Zoom that our brains are working, which is great. Namiko, you're the best. You're just like, we're going to get right on all of that. That is perfect. Yes, and white supremacy definitely has us kind of like, want to be like, whose fault is it? What's it? Who's in the wrong? Who can we blame? Emotional repair with economic reparations. We will get to that. I love that, Angela. Yes. So, are we ready to start looking at some how? Great. So, this is something that you can think of as a way of thinking about and touching into your authentic contribution to racial equity. And let's just get right into it. There are three aspects that I think are really, really going to support each of us to see, where do I want to plug in here? Where can I make the biggest difference? And this is really based on the concept of Dharma. And a woman named Ra Goddess, R-H-A Goddess, is an incredible social change maker and coach and hip hop artist. And she defines, and she shared with me at least, this definition of Dharma as your true nature expressed as your greatest contribution. Emphasis on expressed. Because we all know that, you know, there's the spiritual inclination to just bliss out. I'm just being one with my true nature. I'm connected to all things. All is well in the universe, right? And that's really nice for a couple of days, weeks, maybe years, maybe lifetimes. But I believe you're on this call because that's not satisfying and fulfilling anymore. And the real fulfillment in life, I say, comes when we get to express and demonstrate who we are in physical reality. We're not just metaphysical floating around in ideas and reading books and intellectual engagement. So you're going to make mistakes, but I want you to leave this call ready to make some high quality mistakes. Meaning mistakes that you're making that are really grounded in a strong and true intention and thought, and like, you know, not just doing things blindly, but you're really putting a lot of care into it and intention. That's how we learn. So there are three aspects to this that I want us to touch into today. The first is who you truly are. And when I say who you truly are, this is like not your personality and your identity. We'll get into it a little bit more, but who you are in your heart, the qualities that make you you, even beyond your name. Some would call this the ontological being that is you. The second part is what you got. There's who you are and there's what you got. Yourself as a conduit, and we'll go into what you got. Everything from the way you look and the things you have and the skills within you and your gifts. What you got. Yourself as a conduit. Really kind of looking like, what have I got? What have I got going for me, and how can I use what I got to make the biggest contribution that reflects who I truly am? And then finally, your vision for impact in the world. What you want to leave, right? It's probably beautiful. There's probably a beautiful and unique vision that you hold when you think about future generations that you want to leave behind. And all of those come together, and this is going to be kind of like a compass for you. You know, and the way I want you to use this is to, you know, before you do the big thing, you know, you reach out to the person of color that you want to join your board of directors, or you make the big donation, or you go and organize the reading group, or you organize the demonstration, or whatever it is that you're doing. That you go into the solo retreat about, you know, my privilege. I don't know what you're going to do. But I know that if you're aligned on these three levels, then in physical reality, you are maximizing the contribution. And that second one, number two, you can really refine that, what you got. You can build your skills. You can build your knowledge, right? You can do a lot there. Number one, who you truly are, you already got that. You already have your values. Remember those things that you put into the chat this morning? Who told you to put that in there? Nobody. You chose that quality. And it's because that quality that you put in is essential to who you are. That love, that curiosity, that openness, it was just right there on the tip of your tongue in abundance. You got an infinite supply of that. So that's going to be one of the qualities that you're going to be connecting with, as that quality is a reflection of who you really are. I am open. I am loving. I am understanding. I am compassionate. I am. That is power. I am. Or it could be like, I'm white, and I'm white privilege, and I'm white guilt, and I'm black, and I'm lost, and I'm confused. Who are you going to be? Where are you coming from? Right? Now, you are also wearing all of those things. That's what you got. Your karma. Right? It's a part of the equation. And then your vision for impact in the world. So let's hear some reflections in the chat. Throw them in. We're going to keep flowing at a pretty... I can sense that y'all are awake and engaged, so I'm not worried about you. But we are going to move pretty quick. And let me stop share. Throw some things in the chat. The gift of having our body so we can express. Yes, if we weren't supposed to do things in physical reality, why were we born in a body? You know, like high quality mistakes, grounded in true intention. Integrity, the inner being matching our outer expression. Exactly. Exactly. Thank you. So let us, aligning individually in this way, shifts our culture as well. Yes. Because here's the thing, you know, people can sense it when you're coming from some utter place. They feel it. I'm going to give a very brief example and then we're going to dive in. A few weeks ago, you all should go watch this interview because it's a great interview that of me. Plug. But one of the reasons is because I want you to all see where I messed up. Okay? In the interview, his name is Avi. He's from the Integral Yoga. He does the Integral Yoga podcast. And we're talking, and I say something like, you know, racial justice is a part of your dharma, right? And he's like, yes, you know, it is. It's a part of our spiritual path. Like, and really, all justice is a part of our spiritual path, right? And what he meant when he said that was all justice, gender justice, poverty, all of the things that are broken, all of that is a part of our spiritual path. But you want to know what I was worried about in the back of my head? Right? It's like, oh my God, he said all justice. Someone in the audience is going to think that he's saying all lives matter, right? And they're going to think that I'm this like fraud, you know, giving white people cookies, just like not really radical, not really about the movement, right? And then I'm, you know, going to basically be canceled, and then I will never be able to show my face in the community again, and then I'll become homeless and I'll die. Okay, right? Like, what do they call that? It's one of the kleshas, abhini vesha, right? It's the Sanskrit term. Basically the fear of death. Okay, that's what our brains do. That is what our brains do. Okay, you know, yeah, papanka, the mental proliferation. Okay, this stuff is applicable. So in my response, you'll notice if you watch it, there was a flicker in my compassion, and a flicker in my clarity, and a flicker in my creativity. My flame was no longer clear and pure for a moment because I became obsessed with my appearances, what we call virtue signaling. Look at me, I'm woke. I'm not one of them. Okay? So, lo and behold, my friends, before you is not a saint, but a mere human. So if I can do it, so can you. All right. So let us now take another deep breath. This is fun. Isn't this kind of fun? I'm having fun. Keep your reflections in the chat coming, y'all. Yeah, I got some thumbs up. Great. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to offer you some things to look at, you know, these three parts. And it's just, we're going to do, you know, this is going to be on the stretch side of your quickness to tap in, but luckily you all have a spiritual practice. So I think it's going to be great. And you can continue this later. But the first piece, who you truly are. We usually are acting from the pink or the white here. Who we're pretending to be, our personality, or who you fear you might be, as I just demonstrated. So I responded from who I fear I might be. And this model here is one of the many that I'm gonna, you know, that I love from the Academy for Coaching Excellence. So who you really are. We're gonna shift gears here now into a little bit of, give me one moment. I'm gonna use my brain here to see how we're gonna do the abbreviated version. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do almost the same version that I planned, and we're going to go to 12:45. And if you have to leave early, you can watch the video and you can catch up with us. Okay? I feel like that's the best way to do it. And you can let me know in the chat just to reassure me that I'm not making a very bad mistake. Great. Yeah, I think that we can cover this ground in 40 minutes. Yeah. So I want you all to write down the last couple of words in your notes, and you'll get the recording of this. I've got lots of free material that I can share with you, you know, and just write down the last couple of notes and just trust your brain, trust your heart. You've already gotten what you needed to get because you all are spiritual journeyers. And I'm going to invite you to put your pen down and let your brain know that you can figure that stuff out, all the intellectual stuff out later today. You have a whole weekend and a whole lifetime to chew on this stuff, okay? And I'm going to give us a moment now to just refresh your posture and come back to your heart and your body. And you'll notice that you can already feel in your body as well as the group field that our brains are slowing down. And that is because each person on this call is extremely powerful. I know many of you, but I feel all of you. So ride that wave of our collective grounding right now, returning our awareness to our body, our conduit, the earth below us, our home. And this great mystery that we're a part of. Right now is an invitation for you to call forth what are 2 or 3 or 4 qualities, just like the ones you put in the chat in the beginning of this call, that are just a wellspring for you. You know, it's like, for me, I keep coming back to gratitude. Part of it is because I love it. Part of it's because I'm not that good at it, and I need to learn it this lifetime. So it keeps coming up. And somehow at the same time, I just have so much of it. And I say that who I really am is gratitude is an aspect of that. You know, another one for me is compassion. It's like whenever I'm not being compassionate, I just want to jump out of my own skin. Can't live with myself. It's like the most out of integrity I can be. So there's some qualities for you like that. Maybe you've done some values exercises and you already have your list. But touch into that, and I want you to write down and share in the chat even, what are 3 or 4 of the qualities? They may not be all of them, but 3 or 4 of them that you know are just part of your being, DNA. And whenever you're not being them, you suffer. But whenever you are, all is well, and you just know that you are on the path. So take a few moments, take your time, take another minute or 2 here. You can do some journaling if you need to. Maybe it's something that when you contribute this quality to people, when you express it, it gives you energy, it gives you life. It nourishes you. It almost feels like it costs you 0 energy. And when you're not, it costs you all the energy. There we go. Yeah, they're coming in. Maybe you can recall a moment in your life where everything seemed to be going wrong. And you were like, what am I doing wrong here? And then you brought a little something something in, and suddenly, even though the situation outside you didn't get better, who you were being and how you were showing up was so aligned with your integrity that it really didn't matter. Great. And I see some of you wrote, I am. Perfect. So I want you all to yourself right now to read, I am, and read each one of those qualities. You can mute yourself and say it out loud to yourself. Hear the sound of those words resonate in your voice. I am compassion, gratitude, integrity, creativity, love. I am. Mm. Do you all feel how steady the energy is right now? Please put in the chat, what are you experiencing right now as you say, I am these qualities? Lots of energy. Stability and clarity. Strong, grounded, possibility, hope, loving awareness, peace, grounded, opened. Great. So I want you to, on a blank piece of paper or something at the top, write, I am, and those qualities. This is going to be your first draft of your kind of compass for your authentic contribution. Relief, present, exactly. You notice how just 4 or 5 minutes ago, our brains were moving at 10,000 miles per hour because I was talking about all kinds of heady stuff. And look how quickly these qualities bring you to ground. It's because this is who you are. And this is the place from which you make your contribution. I know you all know this because you've applied it in other aspects of your life. And what I've noticed in our culture of the movement is we kind of forget that the same metaphysical principles that apply to being a parent and figuring out your career, they apply here. So these are going to be kind of this is your compass in a way. And when you want to really track how well you're doing, you might even give yourself a little survey on a scale of 1 to 10. How much am I demonstrating each of these qualities right now? You know, if you have an interaction that didn't go so well in this space, you kind of check in on each of those, like, well, how compassionate was I being, really? Let's be honest now. 3 out of 5, 3 out of 10, okay. Well, maybe that's why that conversation didn't go so well. I mean, you know, I could blame that other person and how ignorant they were and how they really just don't get it. Or I could take it as an opportunity. Great. So these qualities are going to be your North Star as you are looking at. These are your standards and how you are measuring how aligned you are with your integrity when you are doing this work. Warrior, giving, seeker, yes. Let's hear from 1 or 2 people. What are you seeing as we do this activity?
I can
You
share.
want us to share over out loud?
Go ahead, Angela. Go ahead, Namiko, after you, and everyone else put it in the chat.
Okay. What comes to mind for me is when I first started doing work around racial equity, I would kind of like be apologizing a lot and like knowing that I'm doing it wrong. And so I just like, I even in my body just kind of going, oh, you know, I'm I'm a warrior, you know, but it didn't reflect, like it didn't reflect on the outside what was going on inside. So this is really helpful as far as like, how do I hold myself with these values and in doing the work?
Thank you so much for sharing that. And you know, for all of us, you know, one thing that is not your authentic contribution is like to show up as an apology. I know I've done that so many times. You know, I am sorry. Who are you? Right? And I love what Angela's saying is that, you know, people feel it. And like when I see you, Angela, and when I interact with you, that's not what I feel from you. So I can feel that you've done that. I can feel those qualities. Please, Namiko.
I think for me, it feels really accessible to feel into what my values are and what I want to contribute, but then I feel a block towards moving to that. So like underneath the I am statements, I wrote like I am a commitment to moving towards what's important to me, because I think that like if I just keep practicing that and working with that in my soma, then that will naturally guide me to my values, right? But I'm noticing like a block that's coming up.
I love that because there might be a quality that may not be the easiest to come to you, but you know that it helps. You know, like for me, focus is probably like my lowest quality, but I've been spending the last few years of my life on focus because that's what's helped me actually express who I am. And so now it is also part of who I am. And, you know, for you, maybe Namiko, it's commitment, and I am committed. I am a commitment. I love that. So that's another version. And I forgot to say this earlier, but just your values are not the only way to point to the energy of who you are. Some of you have a purpose statement and you've got your personal mission statement. You have your whatever system or framework you use. All of those are words and phrases that can point to the energy of who you are. So just make sure you have one of them that you're using as your North Star. And Namiko is, you know, she noticed, what can I add to this that's going to really get me across the border there, get me across the line? So I am willing, exactly, being willing. So now we're going to go into what you got. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and you're just going to do some journaling right now. Because you're going to look at what are some ways that what you have can be a part of your contribution. Your race and your ethnicity and your money and your not that so much money, your creativity, okay? So, question 1, how can my identity, and when I say identity, I don't mean your capital I identity like I am devotion, but I mean your social, political, you know, your demographics, race, gender, class, ability, CEO, HR director, all of those things, all the things that you wear. Which of those, you know, can you use as a part of your authentic contribution? You know, all of them is probably what you're thinking. Which ones would be a stretch for you? Which of these would be a stretch for you to say, I'm actually going to lean into this one? Which of your privileges would it be a stretch for you to say, wow, I'm going to bring this into racial equity? How can my role, you know, it's like, oh, well, I'm not the diversity and inclusion lead at my company. Well, how can being the lead designer be a contribution? How can you use that position? How can you use the things that you do and be every day? What you got? Because we can relate to our privilege as a curse or as a whip that we hit ourselves over the back with. Or you can relate to your privilege as a sacred responsibility. Because remember, we talked about equity, right? Well, part of equity is when we see that we were given something that it doesn't make sense for us to hold because so many other people need it. Well, is it really in our values and our integrity to be holding it? You know, I think that every time I see some food going bad in my house, you know, it's like, wow, like I'm the steward of this sacred resource, these food, and people are hungry out there, and this food is just going bad. It's the same way with our money. It's the same way with our time. So the second prompt for you, and I'll make sure these prompts get shared out so you can spend some more time with them later. This is just a warm up, touch in. How can my resources and gifts contribute to racial equity? My time, my money, my business's platform. Maybe it's felt too risky to talk about politics at work up until now. Great. Are you willing to take a risk? If that could be one of your highest contributions. I'm not saying go lose your job, and then you reduce your capacity. But yeah, take a risk. Yeah, stretch. How can my resources and gifts? And yeah, stretch here, because we're here to grow. Who you are, you've got in abundance. That's the infinite portal. You don't need to stretch at all there. That's going to give you the capacity to stretch here. How do you know when you're using your energy wisely? Focus more on coaching people for jobs versus try to shift a stodgy nonprofit or org. Great question, Catherine. You create metrics for impact. And we're going to look at that a little bit next with your vision. But you kind of create something that you can keep track of to see, like, how many people did I help? And then you even take a survey, like you can't manage what you can't measure. So really start to notice what you're doing and where is it making the biggest impact. And also touch into your intuition. There's a lot of ways to answer your question. It's a great question. I can sound very sure of myself when I don't think about it. But there's actually not one right way. There's many ways to know. And get some support. Talk it out with someone, See, like, I'm not clear yet which one of these is my greatest contribution. The last thing I'll say is, our purpose often feels like it's this one thing. This is how I used to relate to it until my coach smacked me on the back of my head. But really our life comes in seasons. Like if you're a parent and your intention and your purpose is to raise this child and give them a lot of love and take care of them. When the child is 2 years old, the way that looks is changing diapers. When the child is 15, the way that looks is helping them get through that. When the child is 40, it's being a grandparent and helping them raise their kids, if they have them. So it's the same purpose, being a parent, but it takes so many forms throughout your journey. The same way, maybe right now, you're helping shift the stodgy nonprofit, and maybe along the way, the coaching is a little side thing, and then after some headways happen in the nonprofit, you step out of that, and then now you're really doing the coaching full time. So you don't need to think about what is my life's purpose forever. Just think about what is my greatest contribution today, tomorrow, this quarter. I think quarters are nice, seasons. It's a very natural way of looking at things. I do it in seasons, at least, and it's way easier than, what's my purpose? Oh no, I wrote down my purpose last year and it's not what I'm doing this year. Is that helpful? Yeah, takes the load off. Okay.
Taking an agile approach, you build, measure, learn, and you
Exactly.
start with all minimum viable change, and then you learn from that, and then you iterate, like agile startup, lean startup.
Exactly. We really have to apply all these like business growth frameworks that are so effective at scaling things to our social change approaches. Because otherwise we'll just inherit the default approaches, which is the, models that we were born into. So I really appreciate that. A lot of my social change training came from business training and learning how to be an entrepreneur. Because okay, now I know how to manage relationships with people and create clear agreements, aka contracts. You can, what you got, use what you got. That's all I'm saying. Okay, we are actually going to cover everything today, and it's honestly a miracle. It is. I just want to take a moment and give thanks, all of you. Hopefully your brains are still lucid, because we've been moving pretty quickly, but I feel that you're all lucid. So we're going to do one more going inside. And as we go quick here, you use our brains back into the spirit. So refresh your posture, my friends. We're going to do another little visualization activity. Take a nice exhale. A nice deep breath in. And let's actually try, I want you to repeat, your qualities. I am. Say one or two of them to yourself. And let those qualities fill your being right now. Yeah, there you go. I am open, I am clear, I am loving. This is not an affirmation as much as it is like, I am willing to be. In fact, let's try that. I am willing to be, and then say it. I am willing to be compassionate. I am willing to be clear. I am willing to be present. Just saying hi to our body, still here. Saying hi to the planet Earth beneath us. She didn't go nowhere. And the Great Spirit, I want you to imagine that you got to pay a visit to the descendants of your children's children, or some way into the future. Go as far into the future as it feels right to you. And maybe these are your biological children. Maybe these are your godchildren. Maybe these are the people who were kind of the children of your way of thinking. You know, they were your descendants of your actions. They benefited from the work you did. Future generations, I want you to just sit at their feet for a moment and let them tell you a few things about their world, the world that you are devoted to, the world you want to see, the world where we did it. We're still doing it, ongoing project, but we definitely went as far as we could have ever imagined. What are some of the aspects of this world that warm your heart? What do people experience? What do people share with each other? How do children's lives, how are they set up for their futures? Or how are our institutions, our structures, our organizations, how are they different? What's our culture like in your vision when the impact that you want to make has been made? Beautiful. Now you don't need to paint the whole novel, but just a few things that warm your heart. Because once again, these words will never capture all of what is within you, but they point to that energy and they bring you to that space. So what are a couple of totems, lodestones, touch points of this world? It's kind of like the things in your home that make it feel like home. And I want you to write those down and place them in the chat. Things that connect you with your vision for our world. No borders. No prisons. Song everywhere. Humans remembered how to live in harmony with the earth. Yeah. Ended global warming, and everyone lives in a neighborhood with birds, trees, and flowers. Oh man. Sounds like a Starhawk book. Each family is a steward of a certain part of the earth. Respect for nature and understanding that humans are a part of nature, not above it. Marvel at color is everything. Greedless. And Colleen, greedless, what are we instead of greed? Because if greed is in your vision, then you can't have your vision until without greed in it. Generosity, there we go. Well, connected to our bodies, no hunger. Once again, Dharani, what is it in the place of hunger? Because with a vision, if we're going for no hunger, kind of like hunger is always a part of the story. Slowing down, ritual, no poverty. What is in the place of poverty? What do you want for people? Because if you know what you want for people, you can start to bring a little bit of that into this moment. Abundance and thriving. I know it sounds cheesy if we don't use the buzzwords of, all the big bad problems in the world. But this is a powerful vision, really is focused on what you want, not what you want to avoid. There we go. Gifts are exchanged, economy of values. There we go. Right? That is a very specific theory of change right there. It's a very unique way to approach ending poverty, replacing poverty. Everyone has access to healthcare. Yes. So, we're doing so great. Restorative justice. Hell yeah. So keep them coming, okay? And your homework is going to be to take these three aspects: who I am, what I got, and the world that I want to be creating. And I want you to keep working on that and kind of make something creative, some kind of art piece that you might put on your altar or put on your wall, right? Something that's no more than half a page. You can have a, what do they call them? Like a glossary or an appendix or something later somewhere else. Here's my whole theory. But something that you can read and return to. And I want each of you now to think, and this is just one tiny sweet step that's an example of something you could do that reflected what you've looked at here. And then we're going to close out. I'm going to share with you all one last thing, which is connected to how white supremacy and all this stuff stops us from doing it. But just imagine you could do it, okay? Imagine you could get past all the stuff that has had you procrastinating up until now. What is one simple thing you could do to demonstrate who you are, what you got, and your vision for the world? What is the simplest, just as a way to practice using this and doing something very intentionally from this place? Right? Maybe it's like, I've kept thinking I should talk to my grandma, who I know just does not get what's going on, or I've really had this dream to create a conversation group or to volunteer with a Black-led organization. I've really had it in my heart to join some kind of a program. I've really had it in my heart to donate to this organization. Or maybe you do some more direct work. I've really had it in my heart to hire an assistant so that I can expand the work that I'm doing, this anti-racist work. Whatever it is for you. That would be expressing who you are, leveraging what you got, Great. I'm calling swing state voters tomorrow. Great. Your communication skills, phone internet access, passion for getting us better leaders in DC. Thank you, Kat. That's a great example. I've honestly kept thinking I should probably try some calling. Work with voting.org to change the leadership in this country. Great. Right? Registering for elders recipes. Beautiful. These are great examples. Notice that no one might, see that and then be able to trace all that, what it means to you, but it doesn't matter. Because for each of you, that's a very authentic thing that can make a contribution to racial equity. Being a poll worker as well as on November 3rd. Beautiful. Carolina wants to do interviews with some indigenous people about their medicine. Beautiful. Great. These are the kinds of things that you can do in the long run. You can master. This could be like your thing. So keep those coming. I have one last thing to share with you all that is going to come up when you actually go to do this. This is a phenomenon that occurs whenever we're going for something important to us. Because I didn't just tell you go home and do your laundry. Right? You might even already be experiencing this phenomenon right now. Okay? The phenomenon that occurs whenever we go for something new, unfamiliar, and big to us. And this is another one from the Academy for Coaching Excellence by Maria Nemeth called Trouble at the Border. And this is a framework for navigating change. Now, in the last 9 minutes we've got together, I want you to really put yourself inside of my words right now, okay? I want you to really let what I'm about to share with you be very familiar. Because I promise you, if you do, you're going to get the most out of it. And you'll see how this shows up for you and how it can save you a headache. And I have a video that I can share with any of you that is a deep dive on this tool, but I'm going to give the very brief version right now. So here we are. You know, I want you to imagine there was a imaginary line that separated these two aspects of reality. One is visionary reality, where our ideas, our authentic vision, our desires, I should say authentic vision, all of that exists in visionary reality. A lot of that exists, a lot of what we talked about today, those qualities of who you are, it's real. It's just not in physical reality. Compassion is a real thing, but it exists in physical reality. And in visionary reality, excuse me. And you all know how it is. We can get very excited in visionary reality. We can mistake our insights for action and feel like a lot's going on when really it's just like mental insights. My coach often calls me in for what he calls my spiritual masturbation, where I'm just like, just spinning around on some concept. And then there's physical reality. So let's say you have an idea for an event that's centered around racial equity. And you want to make that event happen in physical reality. You want to actually have this event. It's a goal in physical reality. They are not the same because the event does not yet exist. That fulfillment that we talked about earlier, that only comes when we, with these physical bodies, actually move matter, right, and make change happen, that's transformation, right? That change that can never be undone. You want to make this event happen. Well, almost invariably, when we are going for something that's important to us, that's new and unfamiliar, right? That is taking us outside of our comfort zone, we experience a phenomenon called trouble at the border. So what happens when we're at the border, right? Well, I remember a friend of mine talking about they were in high school and they were so excited to ask someone out to prom. And they had the flowers and the plan, and they were going to say this, and there was the letters and their friends, and it was all so exciting, and they stayed up all night preparing. And then the moment they went to go do it, in their head it was like, oh my gosh, what if they say no? This is a stupid idea. This is so cheesy. It looks so dumb. Why would I ever have thought of this? I could never do this. All of these things, butterflies in their stomach. What's wrong with me? I was so excited, but whenever I actually go for something, I never do anything. What's wrong with me? Raise your hand if this is familiar to you in some way. Okay? Can you please now predict that this might happen for you when you are trying to do your authentic action here? The other thing that happens at the border is things take 10 times more energy than we expect. Because like a rocket ship in the first 30 seconds of liftoff, 3 minutes of liftoff, 90% of the fuel is burned in the first 3 minutes of liftoff, trying to get that thing off the ground. If you ever started something in your life, you know this is like. And the other thing that occurs is that we experience what the Buddhists call the monkey mind. the aspect of our mind that swings from doubt and worry and back to doubt again. And it chatters at us whenever we're going for something important to us. And this is really part of our hardwiring as humans. Unfortunately, we have not gotten an iOS update in the last 200,000 years. We still are trying to survive predators and natural, predators around the corner. You all know this from your yoga practice, that your nervous system is always jumping to conclusions, to fight or flight mode, over some nothing, or some something sometimes, and it saves your life. But 9 times out of 10, right, it's like, don't go any further, don't change anything, you might die. We've kept things as they are for the last 20, 30, 40 years, and it's been okay, so why change anything? Why become a racial justice advocate now? Okay? So we need to be able to anticipate this and see that sometimes when we burn out and you feel burnt out, it's not because you're doing so much work that you're tired, but it's because we're stuck in the dread zone and we keep going back to the drawing board, never expressing who we really are and what's important to us. And the little flame in our heart goes out. It's a different kind of burnout. It's the burnout of not expressing yourself as who you are. So the good news is that when we see this phenomenon of trouble at the border, and we can have that knowing when we go into whatever our authentic contribution to racial equity is, because I promise you it's going to come up. One, you don't need to have that mentality of we've got to push everyone across and force across. Yes, we need to, support people and empower people to take action, but we all know what it's like when things are forced and not really feeling, for lack of better words, like we're all consenting to the way that this is going. What we create reflects the process. 2, it doesn't necessarily mean that something's wrong. It just means that you are having a natural human experience and you're alive, and this is important to you. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so important to me. I'm experiencing trouble at the border. I'm having some monkey mind. And it could actually be an indication that you're actually really on the right path. Most people who are on a spiritual journey have started to notice there's a certain kind of worry and doubt that's like, oh, God damn it, I'm on the path. This is probably exactly what I should do because I really don't want to do it. It terrifies me, right? So you're all going to get this tool called the Monkey Mind Symptoms List. And this is a list of the most common conversations of the monkey mind. And you'll be able to actually go into this list and see, what's happening. And it allows you to play the observer role and take a step back and see, for example, scarcity thoughts. How does that look like in racial equity work or DEI work? There just aren't enough POC candidates. It's just not in our budget. Anything sound familiar? Either, my bias isn't as important as systemic racism, right? One of my favorite deflections. Playing the victim or the martyr. Well, I tried, but people just kept shutting me down. Okay? So to close us out, we're going to have a little cough-up session. I want everyone to just throw in the chat, okay? I promise you, we already know who you really are. It's compassion and stuff, right? But what is the juiciest monkey mind you've been listening to that has been stopping you from taking action for racial equity? I'm not good enough. I'm not doing enough. Great. Keep them coming. What else you got? Because if you've got one that I've never thought, I'll pay you. I don't know where to start. I'm overwhelmed. I'm not an expert. I'm so new at this. I don't know all the facts. Keep them coming. Laziness and complacency. I'm paralyzed, right? What a metaphor. Right, here I am, pacing across my room. I'm paralyzed. I'd rather work on anything else. I fail at everything. Good. Do you see how juicy these are and how much they can take up your attention? None of these has an end point. I'm going to get rejected. And then if I do, that means something about me, right? I'm not qualified. it's going to bring up my trauma. And so, right? Exactly. So this is familiar to all of us. So, yeah, go ahead and we all typed it in the chat. So you all are going to be able to move across the border by taking small, sweet steps, acknowledging every step, creating a process where we're like, okay, we did it. That went well. How'd it go? You know, you got to keep yourself in the game and getting support. Go get the training, the education, the support that you need. Because when you try to take a running dive at the border, it's like jumping off of the high dive at the pool. Whoosh! Ow, right? We all know how it's like when you're not an Olympic diver. But if we take small, sweet steps, the water receives us. So, thank you all so much. We're not going to hear from any of you because we are at time. You all can, you're going to get a little follow-up email to the right email. You know, we're going to figure it all out for you. And it'll have that tool. It'll have a video that reviews the monkey mind. I so appreciate each of you for joining today. And let's think, what's the succinct closing ritual for us? And then whoever wants to hang out and do some Q&A, I'll hang out for a moment. Yeah, what are you all, just throw in the chat, what are you taking away from our session together? Yeah, thank you all. I can do this. Yeah, you can, Darani. I see what I got, yes. Gave me a North Star. Beautiful. Let's do that really fun thing with Zoom where we all come off mute at the same time and say, oh, thank you, bye. It's just a nice wave of energy.
Come on in the picture.
Thank you, Mazin.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so
Thank you
much.
also.
Thank you.
Momo.
You're the greatest. Thank you, Mother.
Thank you, Mazin.
You're an honor to this institute, truly. I think you changed my life just now. For the better, by the way.
Well, you all came, you know, with quite some resilience, you know, with all of the
No, it's right here.
the hero's journey it took to get in here. So thanks for being here.
Part of the trials.
Silly.
So for those of you who have to go, thank you and goodbye. And for those who have questions, I'm available for a few more minutes. I'm just going to plug in my laptop and we can do some Q&A.
Is Teresa still on the call?
I am.
Hi, Teresa, did you see my email about getting in touch with me about resources for anti-racism?
I did see that.
Okay, will you email me, please?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Community is happening right now. Yeah. So does anyone have any questions or reflections that they have?
Yeah, I have a question.
Please.
So I was very inspired. I went to your talk with Kamala as well and listened to your podcast. So just thank you for sharing with the Integral Youth community. My question is I come from a family that is a very mixed family. I have a sister and a brother who have both married into interracial families. And so I have nephews that are African American, nieces that are African American and Native American, and Caucasian as I am, or white. And I have a father who's racist.
Oh,
And,
great combo.
yeah, so at one level he accepts them, and you know he's attended marriages and gives money to his grandchildren, and the other where says things that are just, you know, completely offensive. And in my family we have taken time to speak with him, and sometimes it goes into just this huge time bomb. I mean, a complete bomb. Yeah. So I have a question for you: is when I'm doing work around racial equality, it's actually easier for me to do it when I'm protesting in the street or in an organization. And I have a much more difficult time trying to think about whether we try to keep peace in my family or whether we call out my father. And I'll tell you, my brothers and sisters, also, we can get all over the board of this because it can really be a huge time, you know, a huge bomb. So quite a brief question for you. How do we do it when we're working with people very close to us who are really out of line? And I'll say my father is really out of line. So talk about that.
Well seen, well seen. So you're ready to receive just some really direct response here? Just want to check in. Okay, great.
Yes.
Great. First of all, can we all appreciate what it's like, how much monkey mind we get when we love somebody and they are not, you know, showing up how we'd like them to show up? Right? That will bring you to the border like nothing else. I don't think anyone in the world brings me to the border like my own dad, actually. So one thing I've noticed is that as a change maker and as a person who works with people, I'm a coach, you know, you probably do some of that stuff yourself, right? In our presence, people can be as great as we believe they could be. So when someone is, my father is a racist or is racist, hello everyone, my name is racist, who are you, right? Like that is who he is, as opposed to he has racist thoughts, racist beliefs, takes racist actions, says racist things, is perpetuating racism. He's doing all kinds of things that are not okay and never acceptable. But unless the possibility exists in you that that could change and that who he really is could bloom and come forth and break out of that, I don't think it will be possible. And you will be wasting your time.
You know, that is a beautiful comment. It really helps a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I know that it's not easy to do. That's part of what you got. You got a racist dad. Sorry, see, I just did it. You have a dad who is, you know, has racist thoughts and beliefs and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You see what I'm saying? But it's easy to do. It's easy to label people.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but I'm saying that one, it reflects the system that we're trying to change. And two, it doesn't reflect the system that we're trying to create. And three, it doesn't work as far as people changing.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for your question. It's not easy to have compassion with people who are not woke like we are, right?
Well, one of the things that I follow up in that is that how shame and shaming is not a anti-racist tool or any kind of cultural change tool. That you can't use shame for change.
it's like fossil fuels, you know.
Right.
Like it might get something done, but the amount of shit it puts in the air and what it costs to get it out, you know, and to use it is not worth it sometimes.
Right.
And it's not sustainable. Now, does that mean that in an emergency you don't get in a car that runs on gas and get out of there? No, like it's not like I'm not personally like a person who's like a purist, like no, like I am by any means necessary, but it's like by any means necessary and effective and sustainable and is actually going to work.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And it's like, if it's not going to work, then we don't do it. Go ahead, Carolina.
Yeah, I have a question about, because I'm down here in South America and I grew up in New Jersey in the States, and I'm half Chilean, half from the States. And so my question is that here in Chile, they have this sort of type of language, and you know, it's to the people of Chile in their like everyday language, using labels on people, and they call them by the way that they look, and that it includes, you know, like skinny, fat,
Mulatto, negro,
yeah, and they use that in the language, and it's endearing, but it's always something that's bothered me because I found it to be racist, but at the same time, I wonder, I imagine that this was part of more prevalent in language like this in the States before too at some point, and you know, not as much now, and I wonder how that changes over time, how people have.
Yeah.
And the other thing, just to add to it, is that since I'm not from this culture originally, you know, like where I wasn't raised into it, I don't know people, I don't know how to advocate for changing that, or if it's something that I shouldn't be working towards changing, but I feel like.
No, it's a great, so, you know, there's a couple of questions in there. One is like, is this the greatest contribution, you know, the conversation around language for Carolina Pizarro, like of all things I could do, is this the one? Maybe, maybe not. And then the other question is like, how do we hold these different things? And it's a really great example about how race means a different thing in different places, right? In South America, the castes of race have different connotations. Negra, mulata, these things do mean different things. Now, am I saying people don't use it racistly? They do. There's much more, I think there's a wider spectrum of intentionality and impact for using a word like negra to refer to someone as it would be calling someone a Negro or the N-word here, you know. But the other thing is that in America, people think those things, they just don't say them out loud because we have a policing culture, right? And we have a politically correctness culture, and it's all about the pretenses and looking like, you know, we can change laws and rules, but as Isabel Wilkerson says, the heart is the final frontier. And so I think that the question really is, when someone says that, where are they coming from? You know, because in Sudan, we also have terms, you know, we have blue and green and stuff that we use to refer to different shades of color. And sometimes people use it to insult people. And sometimes they use it to describe people because everyone is from the same ethnicity. So if you try to describe someone, like, you're like, yeah, the darker one, you know, like, that's, there's two people, one of them was darker, you know, and like, that's just a thing that people use to refer to people. And it's a visual cue. Everyone, I want to mention that Angela just put into the chat a 2-weekend workshop that starts next weekend. Angela Seven is someone on this call I'm honored to have on this call because her work has really shaped my work, especially in how she talks about changing culture. And I know she does these really amazing workshops. I think they are a white affinity group, or is it mixed race? Angela, you want to just tell people who's it for?
Yes, they are for white identified folks. We have had people who have other identities, such as Ashkenazi Jewish or even Asian, who identify. It is really to look at the white identity culture and how we show up in this space.
I highly recommend Angela's work. It works. So, let's take a couple more questions. I love this. This is so great. Yeah, I've been thinking about doing like maybe like a weekly Ask Me Anything session. Maybe that would be fun. Any other questions? Just come off mute because I can't see everyone's hands.
I have a question. This is Namiko. I know that personally I have some fear around the current movement and moment and the revolution not being sustained, right? And so in your view, how can we really nourish the moment right now?
Yeah. Ooh, Lord, are we at the border right now? Are we having some group monkey mind, collective, you know, and I will firstly say I'm grappling with that as well. My question of my authentic contribution right now is really like, how can I impact the movement? And like these conversations are really my best idea so far of how we can reshape the movement. And I have these conversations in all Black spaces and in spaces of different backgrounds because I too am deeply concerned that it is. The other thing though is that there's definitely a confirmation bias that I've noticed for myself because you know, I'm really obsessed with the movement being hyper integrity and really great and clean and neat and tidy, which is another white supremacy thing. You know, we like things to be really nice and orderly, and we can't embrace the chaos and the mess sometimes and the realness of what comes up. So what I've been doing for myself is just kind of checking to like notice what media am I consuming, because there's a lot of work out there that's being done that is so on and so right and so beautiful. There are so many organizations that are just really doing it right. There are so many things happening in, you know, all Black and all brown and all in poor communities that are really like woke and enlivened and enlightened and all of those things. And there's also an aspect of just like my own brain getting stuck on the scarcity and the worries. So that's kind of one of my reflections is like, I got to keep myself connected to the full spectrum of what's happening. And I'm also asking the question of like, as someone who is, you know, a person of color, who has a spiritual background, who also has an activist background, like we gotta be the bridges, basically, Namiko. Like the question I have is like, let's talk, like, let's figure out how we gonna do this, you know, and those of us who see the things in the movement. It's like maybe our work is not going and waking up people who are totally asleep, but it's like coming to the people who are already awake but are still kind of groggy and got some salt in their eyes and kind of giving them a little face splash, you know, a little morning yoga class to like do the work more effectively. Yeah. Next, let's take 3 more.
I have a question. I'm
Please.
sorry.
Go for it.
I'm a high school teacher, and I one of the groups I get to work with are newcomer English learners from all over the world. And a lot of my students arrived in the spring, you know, right before our school shut down, and we went into distance learning, which was, you know, one problem. And then, you know, we had, you know, this summer of all of this action and awakening, late as it may be, to things that are, you know, not completely unique to our country, but in many ways unique to our country.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to figure out, I feel this responsibility to help them, you know, understand what's happening socially in our country.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel this huge responsibility that, like, I'm providing the framework for their first understanding possibly of the role that the social construct of race plays in our country.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them come with their own sort of, you know, caste systems or hierarchies and their own prejudices and biases. And we have this major language barrier as well. So I'm doing all of this like primarily through mime and whatnot.
Yeah.
And how so that's a huge question, but you're really good at giving people, like, you know, one thing to think about.
Thanks.
So if you could give me my, like, you know, a racist dad, I have a dad who has racist thoughts. So what I
What's
just
your
want
nugget?
some sort of like guiding principle for, you know, because I feel like I need to do it. I'm at peace with, I need to do this work with my students, with all my students.
Mm-hmm.
But with that,
let me give something a try here. First of all, I want you to take the monkey mind symptoms list you're going to get and see which one of them are you worrying about. Because right now you have a worry. I don't know exactly what the worry is.
It's misunderstanding, because with the language barrier, I can think till day's end about how I want to.
They're not going to understand me, and then further, and then I'm going to fail at being whatever it is or something. There's something you're worrying about. I don't know what it is, and don't be too quick to say what it is yet. Go read the list, because it's going to be very insidious. Insidious. I don't know how you pronounce that word. It's like this little thing that keeps getting in. It's like your little ear thing. And do that and do some observing, you know, so you can create a gap. Because right now, you really do know what you need to do, but your creativity is blocked because you're worried about what might go wrong.
Yeah.
And you're not like fully, you're like kind of still 1 foot in and 1 foot out the boat, because you're still like kind of like, oh, something might not work or something. That's kind of my sense. So you are embracing it, and there's like one last little piece, which is maybe like, I don't know, maybe that I'll mess up, or like maybe someone won't understand, or something that you like is still kind of like, I don't want to do that piece, you know. So that's just my take it or leave it grain of salt reflection. 2, first of all, it's what you're doing is awesome. You know, I sometimes wish that like a Trump supporter would come on one of my calls, because it's always like people who are just like doing such beautiful stuff.
I'm also a Trump supporter. But I'm just
okay,
kidding.
Great. Thank goodness.
I'm kidding.
That means I'm really reaching people. So the good news and the bad news for you is that you are not. You're not the only person they're going to learn about racism from.
Yeah.
They're going to get it every day, and they're going to get lots of very experiential opportunities to see how racism works in this country. And in fact, they already get it in ways that you will never understand. And every day they're learning more, so that you're off the hook for kind of being their only source. What you can give them is critical thinking skills and resilience skills, which is what you're doing. And you can help them make sense of what they already know. So you can, you know, they're going to get plenty of sources of information. So you can kind of take that off your plate of like, I got to give them everything. And just like, what can I, from who I am and what I've got and the vision I've got for my world, what can I give them that's going to make navigating this life a little bit easier for them? Yeah.
And that already has brought so much more clarity. Like, oh, the thing that keeps popping in my mind is you're saying that is starting with their questions instead of starting with, here's what I think you need to know.
There you go.
You tell me.
Yes.
What
are you experiencing? What's coming up? Like, hey, there's this thing called race. Like, what is your experience of that? Yes. And, you know, that kind of learn with them.
Yep.
That'll empower them. Like, wow, I taught the teacher,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So I think we have 2 more questions. Just jump off mute. Thank you all for hanging out for so long. Best Saturday ever.
I have another question.
Great. Let's just check. I'll take it. Just make sure there's no one who hasn't asked
Yeah, only
yet.
if there's no one else that wants.
Exactly. Okay, go for it, Carolina.
Okay, yeah, something else that always comes up for me too is just because I'm biracial, I'm very aware that I have like I'm perceived as white privilege. But I don't know, I feel very confused about how to look and see more about that because yeah, I don't know. I feel strange because I'm between 2 different places. And I don't know what other people have, you know, in my position. I don't know what I feel very confused.
Yeah.
I think it brings up confusion for me.
Mm-hmm. It is confusing. It is very confusing. So you're alive, you're human, you're normal. If it wasn't confusing, you probably should be worried. My quick invitation to you is the what I got conversation. That's where that sits for you. Because understanding being biracial, I don't think you'll ever understand it. It'll never make sense because it's the whole system and race and all this stuff doesn't make sense. You know, I've tried to understand what the heck my identity is. So what's more valuable for you and for your energy is what can I do with it? It's part of what I got. So like I'm white passing, but I have some, white passing exactly. Instead of white presenting, white passing, like you pass. You can gain access to the things for white people. And how can I use that to make my contribution, my authentic contribution to racial equity? And you'll find that it'll make sense. Like, oh my gosh, like this is why I've had this thing all along. It's so as I could have this conversation with this person and tell them this thing, and like I can understand them, and I could be that person who saw where they were coming from or whatever it might be. But I think your best way of moving from confusion to understanding will be using it, exploring how can I use this, and that is going to be one path for you. You'll find many others, but I recommend it.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, let's take one last question. This is so fun. It's I know it's weird for it to be fun because we're talking about genocide and death and racism, but this is how I sustain in this work is I really relish these conversations. It's such a gift to be able to just talk about this stuff. So I think one of the reasons is because I lived in places where we didn't get to talk about these things. And so I have just all this years of pent up, secrecy. And now we're just speaking about these things openly. And it's just a relief for Americans to just keep it real for a second. Nancy, did you have a question?
No.
Okay.
No.
Go for it.
I am curious how, I'm just kind of reveling in the energy that I feel from you. And my question, I guess, is like, for me as an Asian woman who often is and only in groups of white folks in consciousness circles, even like this one, for example. This time has enlightened for me some ways that I, as an Asian American, am complicit in you know, having a seat at the white supremacist table, but I have to be good and I have to be certain things in order to gain access there. And that is in conjunction with my seeing myself as a bridge role in our physical reality society, and my you know, employing my gifts of communication and compassion. And I'm wondering, you know, like now I'm seeking a lot of community within POC communities and more of a reconnection to my own roots. How do you see, I don't know, like how do you nourish yourself in POC communities, and how do you have this energy to be sitting in circle right now with a group of mostly white folks doing this work?
Thank you for asking this question. Thank you for asking this question. Thank you so much. 7 years ago, I was the absolute worst. I was white activists' worst nightmare. You all would just leave my presence in tears because I would destroy you. I would let you know how much you sucked, and it was really bad. So I've been on a journey to be where I am right now, and it has been one hell of a journey, and I can just so relate, you know, with everything you're saying, Infinity, because it's just definitely not been this way for me for the majority of my work. And as a person of color, you know, in anything like this, right, when it's a mostly white space, you have two monkey mind conversations happening at the same time. Not just one, right? Like you go to ecstatic dance, right? And you go into this like dance thing, and it's like there's first just the monkey mind of like, oh my God, everyone's being all free and dancing and getting weird and like just being themselves and expressing authentically. This is really intimidating and I need to be vulnerable, like all the stuff that comes up. Do people love me? Na 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 na. Okay. And then it's like, oh my God, everyone's white. Why am I the only whatever here? Is something wrong with me that I'm the only person of color here? Like, am I not really color enough? Am I not radical enough? Like, is something wrong with this space? Like, are they racist? Is that why there's no white people of color here? All of that is coming up, and then you got both of those things happening at the same time, and then you're trying to like be an effective agent of change. It's very, very confusing. So yes, the nourishing myself in POC spaces is a place where sometimes I go with my more vulnerable things, just because there's less stuff going on, and it's a comfort zone. It's like the reality is it was a comfort zone, and it continues to be. But it's like I'm just comfortable enough to lean into one of the edges that like if I was in a space where I wasn't at least comfortable, I wouldn't be able to, you know, I would shut down. You know, it's like people who do entheogenic or psychedelic journeys, right? Like you get all comfortable in your physical space because you're about to get really uncomfortable up here, right? Or with yoga, like you wear some comfortable clothing because you're about to get in a position that's really uncomfortable, right? So you don't want to double it up. So I think you're doing a great thing in A, playing the bridge role, B, finding POC communities where you can, you know, nourish yourself and just have to deal with one thing at a time. And that being said, for me, the main reason that shifted for me was when I recognized that I'm not purely the victim of my life. And I don't know what it is for you, but I'm just gonna tell you what it is for me. Whenever, like, I would be in a space of all white people, and in my head, I'm worried, like, oh my God, they're gonna think I'm this dangerous black man and whatever. So like, let me act not dangerous and let me act not suspicious so they don't think that I'm trying to steal something. Can you imagine how suspicious and weird I looked when that was like the center of my awareness? I was just like just tweaking, you know, because my whole, this monkey mind conversation, because really unfortunately, it was monkey mind. It's fight or flight response. I'm trying to keep myself safe. My brain is saying, if they think I'm threatening, then they're going to feel threatened, and then they're going to call the powers that be to protect their whiteness, and then I will get killed. Basically, like my brain took it. That's abini vesha. Like that's what our brains do, is when we don't feel safe, whether or not safety is an actual question. Physical safety, emotional safety is another thing, but physical safety, right? In fact, being in an all-white space, I might have been safer, because if a fire happened, the fire department would have been there like this, right? Like, you know, it wasn't in the hood. Like there's all these different things. Like physical safety is a different conversation. So all that to say is I've gotten a lot of coaching and done a lot of programs and trainings and stuff specifically around the monkey mind that I, as a person of color, experience when I'm in all white spaces. And it sucks that I had to spend all this time doing it. But the good news is I love who I am, and it's been a really great journey, because it turns out the same stuff that came up around white people, same stuff that came up everywhere about belonging and no. It's just the same monkey mind. It's just this is one space in which it happened for me. And because I'm going to be a bridge anyway, I might as well, like, so one activity I do all the time is I would take a piece of paper, and if something is just all this energy is spent in my brain, I put the thing at the top. Like, I've done everything. I've done white women, right? And that is right in the center, all my shit about white women, all the shit that I've got of like, oh, they're tokenizing me and da-da-da, and she never really loved me, and, you know, they just want me to da-da-do and whatever, and like I'm some like safe adventure into the this and that fantasies that they might have or whatever, right? Or, you know, they're the only white people that, you know, will ever try and like to do things because at least they're women and they understand the oppression of gender and and I just wrote all that shit down. I had so much stuff. I've done that one with just white women like 10,000 times, you know, and just observing it again and again. And then when I'm in a space and all the white women are doing the things that I've labeled, and that thought comes up, I'm like, oh, this is the thing that I've always meant mean X, Y, Z. Does it mean X, Y, Z though? Maybe not. Is this person afraid of me because I'm black? Or are they just constipated and making a weird face? Like, does this person not want me here? Or are they just nervous because they're at a party and they're an introvert? And more and more, these doubts and worries occupied less of my brain, and then I can be more focused on my authentic contribution. It's not my fault that all this shit was in my head. But once again, it's like it's the glass on the floor in the house. No one can clean it up but me. And it was a really hard pill to swallow. But once I picked up the broom, I'm like, all right, well, I guess no one is going to heal my brain from white supremacy but myself, right? I got to work. And I've got a lot of recommendations for places that have helped. And then I also just spent a lot of time around, I have a lot of really good white friends who've just really, people like Angela Seven, actually, who've helped me heal and just given me different archetypes and different examples of what white people can be and who they are, which also helped. So, yeah, that's what's been it for me. And then the last thing is Tonglen. Oh yeah, this is the other really big one. Tonglen meditation, Buddhist compassion practice. I see white people and I don't see a threat. Sometimes I went to like a pity place for a while, which is like, oh, these poor white people, they got no idea. That wasn't helping. But then eventually it was like, cool, you've got your suffering and I've got mine, and let me not make too much story about it, and like let me just connect with you in a compassionate way. You know, even as I say this, there's just so much more to this conversation, and so I hope something in what I said is helpful. And I know that it's a very complex thing that you and I will both be working on for the rest of our lives. So if you've got anything to teach me, I'm excited to hear it as well. But that's been some of the main stuff for me.
Mazin, I don't have a question. I just want to thank you for doing the work that you have done that enabled you to then create this space where this conversation can happen in the way that it has. I wasn't here from the beginning, but I've been listening as much as I could and joined toward the end. And I just can appreciate so much what you have to offer, and the opportunity that you've given all the people here to listen and hear and understand and find their way to work. Yeah, you've done a great job. Much appreciated.
Thank you all, really. I feel called to share a prayer. We would go with that?
Please.
Great. Just want to take a moment to give thanks to each person on this call for coming forward with their qualities of who they really are. I want to give thanks for our planet, this great home that we all share, for holding us today. I want to give thanks for all of our ancestors who did everything they could to resist and be resilient and be on the right side of history. In quiet and loud ways, I want to give thanks for all of the warriors in our lineage, the healers. And I want to give thanks for the lessons that we've learned from our ancestors who made some big mistakes. I want to give thanks for having that resource of another place to draw from in our work. Give thanks to the Integral Yoga Institute for demonstrating, in this time, putting people of color and people who like talking about these things and have some experience into a position to share with their community. And, we've been in these conversations with IYI even before George Floyd was killed, so I want to give thanks for the relationship we've had. Finally, I want to give thanks for our future generations. Those who inspire us, the human and non-human beings of the world we are seeking to create, for the inspiration that they give us and the wisdom that we draw from even now. May we all, in the rest of our days, today, refine our authentic contribution and be able to make the biggest difference we can in this life with what we've got, who we are, and what we want to create. Ashe. Aho, amen, amin. May it be so.